with flashy demos. Flashy demos can be really exciting. The way that AI makes it interesting is now these digital interfaces can have a sense of life. There's a recent feature that ChatGPT launched with memory.
Yeah.
And that's its own data flywheel that's actually creating a lot of retention. And it's pretty simple.
It's funny that like on one end you have wine and like these old really high-end wine bottles. On the other hand, you have like AI data or AI models.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to our new episode of our podcast. And today we're honored to have Josh here. Josh is my roommate at AGI House, and we are at the AGI House itself. And it's really excited to have Josh. He's like super successful entrepreneur, founded a Coframe and previously like a serial entrepreneur. And we also went to Stanford together. Yeah, I'll let Josh take a bit of like a longer intro, and then David and I will do intro.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm Josh. I'm currently the founder of Coframe. We're a platform that is helping companies continuously self-optimize their websites and other marketing services. And before this, I founded a company called Autograph, which is in the crypto space, which we scaled. And then before that, I founded a company called Access Bell, which is in the enterprise software space, which we ended up selling. And before that, I was at Stanford, mainly studying AI.
Yeah. Okay, maybe David can go.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Like most people know me, but I'm one of the co-founders of PinAI. My background is I was at Ethereum Foundation doing research on like the core Ethereum protocol, mostly on MEV, like mechanism design. Before that, I was at Lyft for many years. I actually started the driver platform in the marketplace, like doing driver incentives and payments. We were using we were calling machine learning back then, right? Like we're using ComNets and like other things to optimize the marketplace, and then optimization as well. Yeah, and then before that, I was at Columbia, so I was in grad school there. I was doing research on learning algorithms and convex optimization.
Yeah, and this is Bill. I was at AGI House until have the baby, and doing startup with David on Ping, and also I was also from doing AI from the very early days, like 2012, and then in Stanford PhD 2014, and did researchers on early transformer 2016. Yeah, let's get started with some question answer with Josh. So I guess today is a free form, but we have a clear topic, which is kind of AI age, AI like UI UX. So Josh actually held a big hackathon before founded Coframe to like bounce ideas and vibe, and that theme is kind of generative UI UX. At that time, I just started doing startup, so I actually don't even know when I started a startup I need to hire a designer. I just directly work with a front-end engineer and was doing all the work. And now I know much better, so I start to really understand the complexity of the problem. So maybe Josh, you can explain your journey on like how do you search the idea in the general UI UX space, and how do you find like Coframe from there?
Sure, absolutely. Well, what got me initially interested in the whole idea and philosophy behind Coframe was thinking about how humans interact with our digital interfaces. And this is not a new concept. We've been interacting with the digital world for decades, but the way that AI makes it interesting is now these digital interfaces can have a sense of life. They can be continuously improving, adaptive to the individual, personalized, and I guess one of the impetuses for starting Coframe was one of the dinners that we held at the AGI House, in which we were thinking about and talking about the future of interactions in this world. And I guess I had like a picture in my mind of like Jarvis, like this 3D video is like interactive, sense, like its own sense of life and so on. Like it does feel that we're moving in that direction. And where does that come down to? What's the common denominator? Well, it's UX, it's user experience. there's been this long history of research and understanding about human-computer interaction, HCI, and UX is at the core of that. And so that's why we decided to start Coframe and build toward this vision. So where it initially started was with what LLMs were good at, which was copy, and pretty quickly got into code, because code is very expressive for creating these interfaces. And now we're kind of like across the modalities. Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit on the founding story, I guess, behind Coframe at least, and why I find UX particularly interesting.
Yeah, actually, it's super exciting that we share a lot of the same inspiration. I also draw a lot of inspiration from the Java's thing, but on the personalized assistant angle, right? Java's really knows the Iron Man so well that Iron Man don't need to explain anything and just ask, hey boss, like, do you want to do this?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And like in a way, even in Pin AI, when we're doing like we are building for like these agentic applications, right? So like we have the personal AI, and then like the applications we envision interacting are like essentially agents, right? Like oftentimes with like no UI, you have your personal AI, your personal Jarvis that talks to another agent to get things done. This is another example of generative interface, right? Like in a sense, maybe like in the future, like both on the agent to agent side, and then also on the human to like machine or human to agent side, like everything will be kind of generated on demand. Yeah, this part is quite interesting. Something I'm curious about is like, how do you see like this developing on both sides? But then also, if you can also add like on Coframe, like what example, if you have some concrete examples of use cases that you are working on now and that you are really excited to work on in the future. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I'll talk first about your first point on agent to human, agent to agent interfaces. Definitely, we're already seeing that today. This is going to be experiencing a Cambrian explosion with model context protocols, and I gave this talk at one of the hackathons a couple of months ago, where in it I had more or less a call to action to develop more of a protocol around this. Because today the interfaces between agents and I guess if we extrapolate, maybe like why are the agents talking? Well, it's either business to business or business to human. Those interfaces are very not friendly, very unfriendly to models and to LLMs. Most of it's through HTML, web, and APIs that are not super well documented sometimes, or even maintained. And so having kind of like a shared protocol would be amazing. So that's kind of where I think MCPs are filling the gap, which is great. So definitely see a ton of need here. I break it down into two main categories. One is information richness, which is trying to give the agent enough context about what it needs to know for taking certain actions. And then the second thing is related to that, which is action richness, being able to give the agent the tools to actually leverage. And once you have a protocol that defines those both sufficiently, you're good to go. So it's really interesting to kind of see the rise of agent to human and agent to agent on the internet. It's still very early days, but I mean, even in the last couple of weeks, I've been hearing in like sales calls with people that they're hearing about Coframe through their chats with agents, through Perplexity or through OpenAI and so on. And that's pretty cool. So it's definitely already happening. There's even companies that are focusing on generative engine optimization, visibility, and observability.
Actually, we had a similar case with Pin AI that after we did our announcement of like a round, and we launched like our documentation where it was explaining the platform. I had a friend who's a researcher in like multi-agent systems that like he was doing like some research, and ChatGPT like gives links to the Pin AI website. It was like literally 1 week after we like made the announcement. It was pretty crazy.
Great. It's definitely happening, and people are experiencing firsthand. And as a consumer, I also experience it firsthand. Like all of my questions that require just a little bit of research and understanding, I go right to the various LLM providers for that. I kind of vacillate between OpenAI and Anthropic right now, but yeah, it's really fascinating. And then your second question is on use case. Where we started and where our main use case remains today is websites in particular, and using AI and agents to continuously optimize these websites. So there's this area of marketing called conversion rate optimization, which is primarily focused on the website. And the whole idea behind it is to equip the business with the most high performing website possible, performing in the sense of it's able to communicate the value proposition to the prospective customer most effectively, and ultimately drive more sales and so on, whatever the goal is. So the very first use case that we came out with Coframe was continuously self-optimizing text, the copy, like the language on the website. You'd run these experiments where you generate several variations of the copy, different combinations and so on. And by running these experiments, you'd get signal based on numbers of people that would see certain variations and then either take action or not take action. And you'd be able to learn what does better and what resonates more with your audience. And by running a large number of experiments like this, you're able to almost like gradient descent to the best, or I guess we're not really using gradients here, but you could if you had access to the weights. But
RL into the best.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, exactly. Reinforcement fine tune now.
You can use some simple sampling algorithm as well.
Yeah. That's what we did basically initially. So in any case, run these experiments. Now we are doing this across the entire website, so not just copy, but also media assets and especially code. Code is something that has been quite impactful. These models are extremely good at generating code. This was a surprise to me actually when I was starting to get into LLMs. I think back in like 2018 or so, it was just shocking that it would ever be able to write any code at all. And now it's like a primary use case that still to me is today a little bit crazy. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, so that's a tactical use case. Like, I don't know, we've driven sometimes millions of dollars in value or in like incremental annualized revenue or whatever. Running these experiments on large companies' websites.
I believe that easily. So actually, one story about me is that when I was at Lyft, like before, like working on the marketplace and doing algorithms from the marketplace, I was like the first scientist on the growth team. So this was like back in 2015-16. Like the growth team basically has no experimentation, is running all these ads and these incentives like with spreadsheets. And then we started like essentially doing some experiments. Initially, we started with A/B tests that would last like a month. And then like slowly over time, we built like a platform where we do like adaptive learning and experimentation. But the cycles like on most decisions are still very slow, right? So essentially like we had some templates for like incentives or like marketing growth campaigns, and if you just need to change the number in the incentive, like $18 per hour bonus for drivers versus $25, right? So that like has like some like faster clock. But then for all other things, then it takes humans to like spend a week coming up with the new variant and then launch it. So yeah, I can definitely see the power of like this use case that you are tackling. And it's fascinating to see that every month, as like these LLMs become better, you can expand like from the text to like the whole interface and etc.
Yeah, that's very real. We see massive improvements in our capabilities each time there's a new release, which is really exciting. Even just this last week with O3 and O4 Mini, we're already starting to test, and it's phenomenal. Like what you're able to do with this type of stuff. And it's just such a bloodbath too. You'd have Claude 3.7 was like a big winner, and that was huge. And then Gemini 2.5 was even better. And then now OpenAI with their O3 is even better. So it's crazy out there.
Yeah, I think the large language model computation is raised to the bottom, but it actually benefit us to build application on top, right?
Yeah.
To me, the large language model is more like a better and better English compiler that compiles to like actionable programs. So it gets better. So I want to drill a bit into the conversion rate concept. As I remember initially when you started the startup, you didn't really know that's the direction you go. It take you a while till you find, okay, it seems conversion rate is one key concept. I remember going to our dinners and all this. So we actually also in PNAI try to design this kind of agentic routing framework that the key is, for example, I know your personal information, and I want to basically route you to the most relevant service provider or the most relevant like expert agent that can solve this task for you. And if it solved the task and you paid that agent, then supposedly that's a conversion similar to the old way where you was routed from Meta to, for example, Shopify, and you paid something on Shopify. So we are also like looking at conversion and conversion measurement. We also use some crypto approach like ZK-TLS and stuff, or like ZK email. When say you get an email receipt, then we basically use that as a proof, similar to the on-chain proof, or you made a transaction. So conversion is actually easier for us to measure than, for example, impression. Since impression, some of that is in the other apps, like domain is completely word guarded. You don't know how many clicks users do, but conversion is actually easier. So we also find conversion is a key concept. So love to hear how do you drill down to the concept of conversion and basically put a lot of business effort there.
Sure. Well, the business is what really drew us to it. The business drives the business effort. I guess that's kind of a fundamental fact of life. So we started out primarily focusing on generation, specifically like UI generation. So one of our earlier projects was an open source one called Coffee. It stands for Coframe Front-End Engineer. And the idea behind this is it was actually a command line tool. And you could basically make modifications to your front-end code base through natural language inline. You'd save it, and then it would be able to like create a component. Specifically, this was for React, and replace that natural language text with the rendered component. And then you'd be able to see the change live if you had hot reload on. So that was pretty cool, nice developer experience. Really, that was kind of focused on that front-end code generation. And that's never gone away. It's really just been a building block, but it was not sufficient. It needed the business case. If you're a business, it needs to be driven by the business case. I think there might be a world in which you have like kind of a business that's focused primarily on UI code generation as a service provider to front end engineers and so on, but it's just not as big of a market to be really, really interesting, at least for me. And that's what kind of drove us to think about, all right, where's this value being kind of accreted? And it turns out conversion optimization and more broadly marketing, very, very large, or at least marketing is a very, very large industry. Conversion optimization is a smaller part of that, but it branches really nicely into other aspects of marketing. And it just really is very close to the bottom line of a business. So, when you're a B2B company like us, primarily like working with enterprise and so on, like you need to be close to the metal. And in the business world, that means close to the revenue. So for us, focusing on conversion optimization was kind of obvious. And it was important for us to keep developing out the technology to be able to support that. That's why, for instance, we worked with OpenAI to develop a model specifically for UI code generation, and became a partner with them on that. And why we keep on investing more into like various agentic capabilities like quality assurance and QA and better code generation and so on. But yeah, it needs to be grounded in a business goal.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think we are also basically, I think the way we design the Ping AI protocol is a little bit like imagining what's the AI world of like recommendation system, and how like today there is a successful business like Meta, like TikTok, that is already doing this routing. So for us, we kind of see it from there, like they spend multiple years and understand the business and where is the like a profit honeypot, and then we're like, okay, let's decentralize that. That's kind of our logic. But yeah, I think that in the end, conversion is really easiest to measurable in terms of
And especially like in Josh's case, like I think our case is a bit different, where we are trying to instantiate this protocol and create like a new network with like different companies. It looks more like a marketplace if you want like kind of Web 2 like a comparison. But in Josh's case, like you are really creating like a powerful AI tool, AI generator. So like from what I understand is like you want to sell to some customers and you need to show them that concretely this thing can generate like X amount of incremental revenue for them, or like things like that, incremental profit probably. Interesting. Yeah. One question I have is like, I'm curious, you mentioned like this partnership with OpenAI is like, how did this work? Is it like something that you really work closely like to develop, or it's more like showcasing that, hey, with using ChatGPT, we can actually create this very useful app?
Yeah. So we collaborated with OpenAI to develop kind of a bespoke model with one of their at that point emerging capabilities. It's now open. It's vision fine tuning. Before that was launched, we were one of the partners. We worked closely with the team to develop out like a great use case for that through UI code generation, and we jointly announced that at their Dev Day last year. And it was just a great way to get access to like new and upcoming capabilities, and we're actually continuing to do that with some of their new and upcoming capabilities as well.
Nice. Yeah. And something I'm curious is we mentioned before that like every time like these foundation model upgrade, then like we get these new capabilities, and like on one hand for application layer developers, this is great, right? Because like you unlock like powerful use cases. On the other hand, it's also challenging, right? Because essentially like you are building a product, and then let's say like you are building on top of like Claude 3.7, and then now like Gemini 2.5 programs out, and I don't know, it can do coding better, it can do like vertical X better, and then like from your perspective is like this is a new mode of developing, right? Where essentially the product is improving without your team directly improving it. Like how do you kind of handle that, and how do you stay on top of that?
You just gotta have your surfboard. That's it.
Yeah, I have the exact same feeling. I feel like it's you need to anticipate how good the compiler go when you write English as prompts, right? And like basically plugging all your tools and stuff. It's like today you might write some very sophisticated code that compiler don't understand. All of a sudden it understands, and your team's over optimization is all wiped away. But in the meantime, you have to keep iterating.
Yeah, there's this great blog which I think was taken down, at least the original, but it's still out there on the internet, called The Bitter Lesson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, take a look at that. Just Google The Bitter Lesson.
Yeah, definitely lots of bitter lesson there.
Cool.
And anticipating, I think you can do some anticipating. I can see it like with working more on this, and if you have expertise on like seeing where things are going. But oftentimes these upgrades are surprising, right? Like, so yeah, it's definitely like you need to surf, like, but
yeah, you also have some level of like conviction that you be thoughtful and then have some conviction about what you are going to be sticking with, right? Because in some cases, like for today, it's easy to fool ourselves with flashy demos. Flashy demos can be really exciting, and maybe you get it working 1 out of every 3 times or whatever you try it for your use case. That's obviously not going to be good enough for production. It depends on the type of use case and who it's for. But especially for like B2B and definitely especially for enterprise, it's, you've got to have how many 9s of reliability.
Yeah.
But what you can, to an extent, rely on is the reliability of these models going up, and I guess your own team's ability to create evals, to create a more robust system around it. So yeah, demos can actually help to pave a way in terms of what's possible. And then you have to have that own internal sense of conviction, either to wait until there's a better model and building the infrastructure around it, or even just putting in the grunt work of building great evals around it and making it better.
Yeah, in terms of actually improving, I'll drill a bit down. There is actually, to me, on high level, 2 paths. One path is, in general, I call it all post-training, no matter it's SFT or it's RL fine-tuning, DPO. It's like, do you modify the model's weights? Mm-hmm. One is like, you decide, okay, how to modify the model's weights, like the old days of machine learning. The other is like, okay, whatever is giving me the best compiler today, like O3. And what I do is writing complex prompts, writing good tools, writing good real-time data stream into it, so that it becomes a more powerful agent. That's like a clear two separation, right? Like, do you modify the model's weights?
Yeah. The practical way of thinking about this is try to be as lazy as possible when you're prototyping. That almost always means just doing prompt engineering. And then once you have a ceiling that you've hit and a use case that you're going to drill down into and some value established, then you can go into things like fine-tuning and DPO and so on.
Yeah. But like when you actually deploy the product, after you do all this crazy in-context stuff, like prompting, you still try to bake it into the weights and make it more like a post-training model.
It depends on the use case. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't need to. But yeah, there are cases in which you should.
Okay.
Yeah. It seems another principle that seems to work, and I can port it also to maybe your use case in Coframe, is that, as you mentioned, like you want many 9s of reliabilities, right? Especially when you're working with application where there is a lot of stake, right? Can be a lot of like economic value or like some critical function. But it seems that one emerging pattern is that like those 9s, you don't get them from the LLM itself directly, right? It seems that even in your case, like you have a lot of glue, right? You are running this experiment and you're kind of using like the power of the LLM as like kind of this text coprocessor basically. But then like you have this glue, which is essentially like, it's more like this hard code that gives you kind of peace of mind. Is that how you think about it? Or like, I'm curious, like whether this model is kind of like what you also see emerging.
Yeah, it all contributes. Like it's not just one LLM call, it's multiple, usually different LLMs that have different strengths, at least until we have one super intelligent LLM that can do everything in one shot. But yeah, like usually you structure these as a pipeline or a graph, and it's a combination of hard code. We don't hard code values, but like, code structure and then also parsing and so on. But yeah, like LLMs can certainly contribute to the 9s. Well, nowadays it's more like the 8s of reliability. But yeah, better LLMs are going to be more reliable, and the way to help improve the reliability is to, like I said, do great evals. That might be through just creating like better data set for optimizing your prompt. It might be through creating a really nice graph of steps that you need to go through that structure the output, whatever the use case is.
Yeah, and have you tried anything beyond SFT for like actually improving your model weights for specific front end growth conversion?
Yeah. We've experimented with like everything. Like we've done, and we've also had like different models, right? So we've done a lot of prompting, obviously, some SFT, some visual SFT. We've done some preference optimization based on the signal that we get, and yeah, like we've played around with everything.
Yeah. So far you find in your business, like in like AI as a product manager, a lot of times we dream about this data flywheel, right? Like more users use it, and then you have more kind of like noisy human feedbacks, and then you improve on it. In reality, I think it's very, very hard to spin the real like data flywheel. Even I think ChatGPT today is not mostly rely on the data flywheel, but more rely on like a paid expensive training data.
Yeah,
do you find that the
right.
flywheel actually helped you?
It depends. So it really heavily depends on the use case, on mostly on the use case, I would say, and the data that you're getting, the shape of the data, the type of data. I would push back. There was a recent feature that ChatGPT launched with memory.
Yeah.
And that's its own data flywheel. That's actually creating a lot of retention.
Yeah.
And it's pretty simple. It's like just recalling, stuffing all the context in the prompt. It's like nothing super fancy, but it is data and it is a flywheel for individuals. And yeah, we're seeing the same thing with our own products. Like companies are running experiments. You're generating insights from the results of those experiments, learning from them, creating new and better ideas to create new and better variations, and then that continues. And so within each company, you do have a data flywheel that is pretty powerful.
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting you mentioned the like ChatGPT new like personal memory feature. Actually, we were building that since the start of Ping. Right? We were like, okay, it seems too hard to modify the model weights for everyone. Right? It's not sensible that everyone have a different weight of their model. Maybe Laura, it's possible, but in general, it's not possible that everyone have a completely like a full fine-tuned model. So we kind of are thinking, okay, clearly it's going to be context data, and the personal context data. How do you structure and secure it? So that's a lot of our early work is about how to pull data from like your like say chat history, from your like Twitter post, from your like say Web3 trading history, or like Robinhood trading history, all these things, your shopping history. And then you have too many data, then we realize, oh, this data are so raw. It's kind of like in quant trading, you have all these other book raw messages. You cannot directly stuff all of them into large language model context. It's not smart enough for the context window. Even if it goes to 10 million, it will quickly blow up if you dump everything to it. Yeah. So we constructed this memory layer that is also essentially like a featureization or in some summary layer. And a lot of times as model gets stronger, we tend to dump the raw, say for all of your like Twitter posts into the memory. Yeah. The same way today's ChatGPT do it. So I think we just climbed the same ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. The larger context windows help, but yeah, that seems like we've had that approach for various inputs, where you'll initially just do some type of summary of the input data through featureization or whatever means, and then now you can just dump it all in like as is. We've seen that in a few cases. Yeah.
I think the reason I ask about data flywheel is I completely understand on the context data level. It's relatively easy to run this flywheel of like actually you accumulate more context data, the model gets better. But I actually struggle to see a few successful use cases that they actually can use the flywheel to improve the model on the fly. I mean, I used to do algo trading. In algo trading, you have the real-time data, and real-time data actually got every night we retrain the model so that the model is weights is refreshed every night. Yeah. And today, large language model is so big that this continuously fine-tuning of continuous RL actually is, I don't know how practical it is and which company is using it, but I dreamed about it initially and quickly realized that my bankroll is not big enough for me to even experiment with. If you have ever tried something, since you guys actually have enough business use case, that might make sense for you to try some of this continuous optimization, like monthly.
Yeah. So my advice, I guess, or I'll venture advice, because I think that this is what the underlying question around here is, like, when does this make sense? So it's the same as before, which is when you're prototyping, just prompting should be sufficient. Like, context should be sufficient. Context is all you need. There's even a paper that was about that. And that's what we're doing very heavily with our models, right? Like, all this experiment data, we're featurizing it. The results, they're spat back into the model, and that does well. Like, it's fine. At least for us, that's sufficient. I don't know about for like super high volume use cases where the correct signal is really nuanced and so on, like chatbots, consumer chatbots. That's where it can make a lot of sense. But I don't know. We're pretty far from that. Most business use cases are kind of far from that, and it just isn't practical or even as effective. I'm sure that what's actually really nice is that with only a couple of examples, or maybe even one, you can have significantly better results. Whereas if you were to put in one or a few examples into the model through fine tuning or some RL-based approach, it wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So in our case, at least, where you have businesses running on the order of like tens or hundreds of experiments, simply because they're rate limited by the traffic that they have, it just makes sense to put it in through the context.
Yeah. You have a lot of like A/B test style like data, right? Like, basically whether this method is better for growth, the other method is for growth, and there would probably be a lot of weak signal at high volume if you have big enterprise customer.
Yeah, there's definitely signal, and it's the same signal that human growth teams, create and use today manually, and so we don't actually use A/B tests. That I have. A/B testing is or at least that concept, I think, is a thing of the past, or should be. We're using more reinforcement learning based techniques, like multi-arm bandits and so on.
Yeah.
But yeah, same idea.
Yeah. It's kind of, I think Midjourney had an interesting example that I find it's kind of like continuously do data fly well and improve their model, since their optimization goal is kind of a more artistic taste.
Yeah.
And they have that 4 pick 1, and they use that to RL into a better model.
Yeah, we built some functionality into our product as well, where you like pick one, like, or you get feedback on something and so on. Like, that's actually quite useful.
Okay. I see. That's cool.
It's always good to find ways to give the model more useful information.
Yeah. Okay, maybe let's change gear a little bit, since I want to also hear about Josh's past experience with Autograph. Maybe you can share some of your journey there.
Sure. So Autograph is a company that is powering the kind of like experiences that fans can have with their the people that they're a fan of, or the brands that they're a fan of. It was we helped do a lot of the high, I would say that the high ticket celebrity, NFTs within that boom cycle. Co-founded with Tom Brady, worked with a lot of athletes and people like that initially, and then gradually added more people across other industries like music and television and so on. And our whole edge was, we're going to do this the right way, be the partner that will be buttoned up and professional and kind of like first class in a world that was very exciting but confusing for a lot of these brands. And so a big piece of that also was like, we're going to make a user experience that people can trust. I mean, the whole thesis behind us partnering with these big brands was that they have value in the recognizability that is latent, and we could tap into and help to onboard many more users into the Web3 world through that kind of latent trust. And so that's what we did. And yeah, I guess that's a little bit of a shared through line with it's all about user experience at the end of the day. The better user experience. That was kind of the whole edge. And so, yeah, recently the company merged with another company called Future. Yeah, so that's basically the TLDR.
Yeah. I think, David, you were also pretty into that. Like, I think you know a lot about it.
Yeah, I was definitely like close to like not close to the NFT kind of boom, but in general, like I was in crypto at that time. Like it's definitely like exciting, but also I can see the confusing like age. The interesting thing is that the like non-fungible token standard is like you can do whatever you want with it, right? And then for some reason, like during that cycle, it was mainly used for like there were like the retail art collections. And then I guess I'm curious about like what your application was, because like you're mentioning like these brands could use them, like maybe both on the creative side, but then also kind of on the technical side, unlocking like some functionality for users. Yeah, so I'm kind of curious on that part. And then like also like having gone through it, like I think people are starting to use like NFTs now for like things like identity and like things that are essentially like a bit different than what was going on at that time. So yeah, kind of like if you can tell us more around like how was it at that time, what use cases were you focusing on, and then like if you think that like there can be like some future like maybe like more technical application that actually like can make this technology useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So our initial use case was primarily focused on collectibles, which is something that just very simple people could get it. That was the initial use case of NFTs in the market, broadly speaking, I would say. Ever since the first ones out there. So we did a lot of collectibles initially, and then we got into other types of utility. So being able to unlock certain experiences, like when we hosted Tom Brady's Super Bowl party,
I see.
The pass holders could access that as an experience, and that ownership was verified and validated on chain, of course. Ticketing, so that's kind of like related to that. We got into gaming, and being able to have your items and collectibles be mapped to experiences in virtual worlds and that kind of thing. So got pretty deep into that too. And then the broader utility of these tokens, it's really interesting to me that most things in the world that are illiquid have been partially financialized, but are lacking in other areas that liquid assets have, because they can be fractionalized. Stocks are very, very liquid, but they are like derived from atomic units, and in a sense, like you could apply that concept to when people create all these different financial derivatives and very interesting kind of instruments on top of stocks and equities and everything else out there in the liquid world, and applying all those ideas to illiquid assets, that becomes really, really interesting. But the rails for that, and it's just been an uphill battle. It's the technology hasn't been set up for it until bringing them on chain, right? So now with NFTs, you can fractionalize these illiquid assets. You can borrow against them in decentralized fashion. you could do all the different instruments that you like. And so we started to see a lot of emergence of like interesting new financial primitives on illiquid assets in the DeFi world. And then you could, we haven't seen, I guess, this much of this, but what I think the future holds eventually is being able to apply all these different financial instruments and techniques to pretty much any illiquid asset out there. This could be, of course, real estate is a big one. A lot of people talk about art, like physical art, carbon offsets, like different property, right? There's lots and lots of things out there that you could apply this concept to. One of the more unique ones is wine that I just like. I guess I've known about it for a while, but like there's this platform called Vinovest that's doing this more of like a Web 2 manner with fractionalizing wine bottles. Kind of another thesis that they can accrue value over time. But yeah, like most of the world out there is, well, I don't know most, but like a significant amount of the world out there from the financial standpoint is illiquid, and being able to unlock more liquidity and like functionality to take a technical perspective to it is really interesting.
Yeah, it's so super interesting. I actually hold the same thesis. So like, I think crypto have invented a lot of these like form factors that allows to like basically transact and do price discovery on illiquid assets. Just you need to find a better asset. Today it's still RWA and a lot of traditional assets. I actually believe data is one of the unique assets that should be put in this way, right? Like that's part of what Ping is doing is actually kind of give every consumer's like a personal data with their preference as a major asset of their self, right? Mm-hmm. Like I feel like there is a big potential there, since data in general is very hard to commoditize. It's not like oil where you can like just invent this big barrel. And even oil, it takes them probably 100 years until they figure out how to put them into the same like a purified level and put them into the barrel, so it's like tradable on CME.
Yeah, I'm certainly like I'm very bullish on that use case. It's a really interesting one. There's lots we can talk about there.
Yeah, and to me, like it's really fascinating when we talk about these technologies because it's kind of different from like AI or like cloud technology, in the sense like it's kind of like at a lower level of like the social and economic fabric. It's like basically property rights and then like things like that. So like often like with these things, I think in my mind not about product market fit, but like industry market fit, right? It's like what is something that like people want to exchange, or like there is some industry there that like could benefit for like adding like property rights and then liquidity, of course, as a derivative of that. And it's funny that like on one end you have wine and like these old like really like high-end wine bottles. On the other hand, you have like AI data or AI models. But I guess this is also the fascinating thing. And I think collectibles was an early experiment, but there is basically the world out there. And I'm excited to like experiment more on the AI side for sure.
Yeah, I think all you need to do is look at the industry breakdown of Sotheby's to kind of get a sense of the value of each category, or at least maybe a relative value.
Yeah, I feel like it's more important to look at the growth curve, like which ones are going through the explosion of growth. I feel like it's actually easier to shape an exchange or something when there is an explosion of new transactions, since the existing ones might be giant, but it's pretty hard to kind of like take the market from an incumbent that use old form factor to transact things.
Yeah, growth can help to also gather the excitement of people, right? Like wherever there's rapid growth, people are going to have naturally more excitement around it, and getting the flywheel started initially will be easier.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, if you look at NFT, like for example, what you guys do is like bring something that was not like a custom, like not a commodity asset. It's pretty hard to like sell the rights to go to Tom Brady's party in the old days as asset. You basically open up a new asset, so it's essentially from zero to some real demand, and that is the explosion that takes off much easier than
infinite growth.
Much easier than like figure out how to NFTize like say like a nice art which is already have a market that is illiquid. Now it's again still illiquid because it's expensive.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a big world, right? Like there's so many different ways to look at and think about this. From a pure value capture perspective, you probably want to look at like where are the inefficiencies now, and how can this technology make it more efficient? And that's for some of these markets, it's a substantial, in probably the hundreds of billions. But for getting started something new, and just capturing the lightning in the bottom moment, looking at the growth rate can be really really good as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Right. Like you can finish your finish line, and then I can like do a few more rounds with Josh.
Yeah, I think thanks Josh for coming. Your experience, I think, is fascinating because like the people we talk to are obviously interested in this crossroad between like kind of AI capabilities and then like of course like blockchain protocols and technology to kind of coordinate them. And I think like your journey is kind of like jumping between the two is quite unique. And yeah, good luck with Coframe, and very exciting to be following your journey going forward as well.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And one more question I'm curious is like you also thought about in the early days like a code gen and also like a front end code gen, and there is a bunch of company up there, right? Like say v0.dev, there is like Bolt.new and all this Lovable. How do you see the path? Do you see like this different business that path might merge with Coframe, and there might be even like say, for example, Cursor might even enter this type of business. So how do you see the landscape evolve?
Yeah, so we don't see ourselves as selling to, I'm going to take this back to business use case.
Yeah.
We don't see ourselves selling to developers.
Yeah.
Whereas of course these other platforms are. We are tackling the marketing budget, and that's where we're going to be entering more into. So it's like our entry point is into website and email campaigns with the code generation and so on. Pushes also have some code gen, but like it's really just as a vector into a larger budget than what is typically a larger budget than the software engineering budget at companies, or at least like the kind of office of a CTO budget. So that's kind of like the angle that we're taking. Do I see it like branching into these long term? I mean, perhaps we might end up building kind of complete full experiences for businesses, which would of course be themselves apps, but that are self-improving and so on, have these nice properties. But it's just so far out that I don't think it's even worth thinking about.
I see. Yeah, I was spending a lot of time thinking about product form factor for consumer AI product, right? Like in Ping AI, we build this consumer product. So like it's important to have high quality content. But if I presented the same way ChatGPT Deep Research present with like a giant long set of text plus a bunch of like sources or tools, it's still super boring, right? So we have kind of like a two-step thesis. First step is like a personalized question engine that help you ask questions to things like deep research. But eventually we want to be like a personalized task intent generation engine. And basically it's not only a question, it's a question plus actually do something with the question, so that the entire deep research is kind of a intermediate thinking result. And in the end, for example, it just push to you the best shopping option or the most like stocks to trade or the best coins to buy or the best NFTs to buy that you might like. But in the middle, there is a big component, which is you interact with human. So it's important to show a good like UI UX to the human rather than like show a bunch of like thinking tokens.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was curious, how do you see AI play into the steps when you have like auto-generated AI content? It's very like the form factor is very hard to constrain, right? It's not like traditional mobile internet product where you have a PM and then PM design this thing and then give it to designer polish it, and then the front end people make it very smooth and like polished. In today's AI world, the whole content is generated on the fly, but you cannot have a designer on the fly. And today, designer seems to be a pretty hard step to automate. How do you see that evolve over the next 1 to 2 years? I can easily be confident in 5 years this will be solved, but
yeah. So I think that the intermediate step is you have kind of a predefined set of components that you can pull from, so that when you're generating your experience, all you need to do is create these like maybe token-based payloads, like JSON payloads and whatever, and these are rendered out with it just makes it easier for the LLM to produce a nicely designed thing, similar to how humans today, human software engineers will use a component library or design system. And so having that pre-built is going to be a new way of building apps. We thought a lot about this. There's this area of software engineering and user interfaces, which I think of as server. It's called server-driven UI, and it's SDUI is basically where you have these payloads produced by the server, which are then kind of this was I think this was initially developed for mobile and primarily used for mobile because it's difficult to push updates to the mobile app through the App Store. You can't do it so rapidly. So you want to create the system that it takes the payload from the server and then uses that to render these components. And that concept is very powerful and interesting, especially for this 1 to 2 year what's possible in that time frame, where we can produce these nice payloads of what the LM is trying to achieve, and it can generate fairly okay design, but for the most part, it's not production quality and it's not self-consistent and so on. So having that approach is probably a good intermediary step.
I see. Yeah. I remember also I introduced you to this guy, the CTO of Chinese Figma, right? And he's also saying they are experimenting this as more like large language model pick up these design elements as tools. I tried a little bit observing our in-house. We have a very strong in-house designer at PingAI, and she do a lot of like AI assisted design, but it's still like I think there is a human element of like being a judge. It's like she still uses say GPT-4o to generate a picture with the prompts that another guy who is more like the product ideation guy come up with to generate a high quality agent card, which is ideally should be all done by AI. Now there is like 2 elements of like a human expert input. One is the product ideation guy who create a good prompt to like create all the text content to make it actually interesting. And for example, a concrete example is like create a kind of meme style classification of your trading and shopping fashion, like a style based on what you have been like traded and what you have been bought on like e-commerce website. This is something that we give you maybe like 16 different classifications. Oh, you are like a Lord of Meme Coin or you are Diamond Hand, and then come up with a picture of that. When we design that picture, somehow the designer still use AI to do it and then put the AI into Figma. But somehow today there is a human in the loop step. Actually, it's more expert in the loop step. The expert is stronger than the AI and can guarantee, since you were saying, the consistency, the smoothness.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Do you see this like happening in enterprise, or enterprise has a very different workflow? We are more like the very small company workflow, right? Like.
Yeah, no, for a lot of things, we need to have an expert in the loop as well for enterprise, because there'll be very stringent design brand guidelines, compliance guidelines, and so on that need to be adhered to. And so we have a system, like there's like multiple layers of protection, right? Like there's the initial generation, and then there's we're actually generating a number of different samples. You're selecting each of those and then putting them through QA. That QA is autonomous as well, and that's getting better and better. It's like partially what we're working with OpenAI on. And then after that, you have human QA, which is able to then basically evaluate and see like, is this going to be okay to pass along to our enterprise counterparties, to the folks on their QA team, and then they have their QA team, and they'll have adjustments, and they'll come back and be like, oh, this isn't okay, or this is, or whatever. Sometimes there's some rounds of iteration.
I see.
And eventually you get it to a good place. But sometimes it's like just like very fine, when you're, I don't know, for instance, just like moving a section up on a website. That's pretty fine. You just have to make sure that it doesn't impact any performance metrics and the core vitals or anything.
I see. I see. So you guys have actually 3 steps of like expert in the loop, and it will probably take
basically
a few weeks or even a month for one thing to push from.
That really depends on their side.
Okay.
Our side is pretty quick, but it depends on their team.
I see. So do you see you can apply your whole tech stack to a small company as basically, for example, maybe in some sense, like UX generation studio, where like say, for example, our designer can slowly put in the preference and the workflow, and then our dream is like automatically generating any of the agent card. That is kind of like a product on itself, mini product on itself. So it should be just the AI look at your preference and then come up with a personalized question, come up with a personalized task, and then an expert agent, which does not involve a human, can take and generate the content, and then another expert agent that is on UI UX can pick it up, and ideally, just it needs a human in the loop for the first 100 example, and then learn enough to do not have the human in the loop, so that it's like when user needs something, it's like on the fly, everything generated. How far do you see that imagination become real, and what's the gap that you think will be the hardest bottleneck to pass?
It's just the spectrum. It's a reality today with our system. Like, it's just how good is it going to be, really? And so, would it be good enough for like a small company to use as is out of the box? Like, might be, but it might not be. It's certainly not good enough to use without the human expert in the loop. For larger companies, we don't feel that comfortable. And it's totally fine too, because it's just like, from a economics standpoint, it should work itself out easily. But I don't know. I think like eventually we'll get to the point where, and then we're investing more and more into the QA agent part of this. Eventually we will get to the point where it's able to do the job of the humans there too. And you have the full loop kind of running on its own.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, last question, actually, to end this. In AGI House, we often do what's your consensus, anti-consensus guess of the future, right? So what's your anti-consensus guess of like maybe the next 1 year? Let's put it harder, right? The shorter the frame, it's actually hard. What will happen in this like AI generated like UI UX space?
So one thing that I've been saying for a while, and I still believe is true, is if progress were to stop entirely today, in terms of like the capabilities of foundation models, we would still have years of things to build, and we're not at all making full advantage of this technology. Like most people just don't understand how powerful it is, which is shocking to me. It's like Prometheus is like, giving us fire, and like we just sitting there like being like, oh, maybe it can roast a marshmallow. No, like you can like actually power a steam engine and like do all these interesting things. But yeah, there's a lot to build, and we just need to put our head down and grind.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much for everyone to come, and thanks so much for Josh to have this awesome podcast. I think it might be like a really fun one if you are like anyone who design, especially consumer products, and especially do growth. Definitely do not miss it.